I'm not a tall man, Janine.
And that's the first thing they're going to hear tonight is Chance saying the Forrest Gump quote. Welcome everybody to an Apokalupsis Historia Live with Brady and Chance tonight. We're going to be bringing the one of the deepest questions in the Western mind at the moment. Is God dead, and did we kill him? And more importantly, did we ask this question 300 years prior to when it's been, acknowledged? But otherwise, before we get started, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to help support the channel, as we're going to be pouring through some sources tonight, looking at not just Christopher Marlowe's Dr. Faustus, which is probably the lesser of the famous Faust characters, right? I'm definitely going to bring some Goethe Faust notes tonight, as we were talking about that, and we're also going to be bringing up Nietzsche, Friedrich Nietzsche. I'm most familiar with Thus Spoke Zarathustra, but if you'd like to help support the channel so we can continue bringing all this research, or if you'd even like to join us, as we even read some of these texts real time together in our book club, make sure you check out all the links down below in the description box. Go join the Patreon group where we're reading all these texts every single week and having really, really deep dive discussions about all of this stuff. And I've also actually launched a new course classes. It's really more designed for, so if you know anyone in homeschool land, I'm starting a course on teaching the Iliad to middle school and high schoolers, because I actually have professional resume for actually some of this stuff. So if you'd like to go check out the links down below, claosclassics.com. I'm eventually going to start some Shakespeare stuff in here, of course, too. I just wasn't really sure which one I wanted to dive in. I'm afraid I would break some minds if I was going to start with Macbeth right away. But yeah, I'm definitely going to be doing all the sort of classic texts and bringing all the sort of research we do around here, but, at a much more slower pace, essentially, for younger minds, essentially. So if you know anyone that's going to be interested in like this and like the work we do around here, where we're going to be thoroughly reading the text and actually going through it, because some of these schools that I've been a part of, they like to say they read these stuff, but no, you find out the teachers are showing them movies, or they were rapid fire getting through it, and the students next year like, yeah, I didn't actually remember reading any of that stuff. So if you'd like to help support me and the channel, make sure you go sign up for the classes, trying to spread the word for everybody, or yeah, come join the book club, where of course you'll get access to our private Discord and meeting with us weekly as we go through these texts, because some of the things that we're talking about tonight is stuff that we already talked about in book club several months ago, actually back in March, I think, is when we read Dr. Faustus. But otherwise, without further ado, let's get right into this. Yeah, Christopher Marlowe's Dr. Faustus. Of course, we like to question some Shakespeare authorship around here, and I think Christopher Marlowe is also up for some authorship questioning. We actually did a stream some time ago, Marlowe Disintegration or something like that, where we actually showed, or mainstream scholars today looking at Marlowe texts and being like, there may be like more than one dude in here, maybe there's more than one style, and so therefore, if you think Shakespeare's got maybe more than one hand in it, maybe you should, especially if you think Marlowe is in Shakespeare. Well, what if Marlowe is more than one dude? Like, what does that mean? Not that we'll necessarily drift into that. We're gonna, because my whole argument is like, if we don't even understand what these texts say, we should definitely not be trying to assign authorship to them, right? For the most part, we should maybe try to see where any of those ideas align with whatever group or whatever author might be actually trying to pin this stuff and sort of put their ideas onto paper. And I think this Dr. Faustus one is a perfect prime example of something that I think people are sleeping on, because other people that we've talked to in this scene, they were like, oh yeah, Dr. Faustus, it's good, it's, and I don't know, I kind of heard a lot of the same orthodox things that you kind of hear about that kind of stuff, right? Just that it's, oh yeah, it's a tragedy, and oh, it's a cautionary tale, by Marlowe, the atheist, that's somehow using a cautionary tale, but with a Christian sort of framework. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And so we and Chance, Chance hadn't read it in some time, and I had never read it before earlier this year, so we were going through it, and I think both of us were just having our minds blown by this thing. And so I think we got on the same wavelength about, like, yeah, I think this is what we're seeing, I think this is really interesting. And of course, yeah, one of the major themes that I thought was kind of speaking really loud to me was like, yeah, this is like the thing that was anticipating Nietzsche almost, right? That Nietzsche was going to talk about, yeah, I think that the European mind is going to have this problem as it continues to strive forward, as it tries to, tackle nature and build technology and sort of expand itself, that this striving, this ambition in this Christian framework is going to lead to, what I've sort of called a psychological break almost. But before we maybe dive into that stuff, Chancey, I don't know if you have anything about maybe just the textual history of this play, that if anything off the top of your head that you want to lay out, and the other orthodox summary of the play too. What are the, if you're gonna go, Dr. Faustus explain, what's like the most common thing you might find about this play?
Okay, so this is a notable play. This is a play that was very well received back in the day. It played a lot. It seems to have debuted in 1594, I believe. Sorry, 1592, and was printed 1594. And sorry, I butchered that too. It was printed 1606 is the A text. 16. Oh man, I am so sorry, guys. I'm
It's all good. I'll throw
blanking.
you on the spot for those. Like, give me some numbers right now, Chance. And you're like,
No,
oh no.
I know that stuff. Like, I absolutely know this stuff. Um,
But yeah, that is
okay.
important to note that there are two
Right.
different text versions of this.
4 is the A text, 1616 is the B text. So there is not technically a canonical version of this play. That's something to note. Both of those dates are long after Marlowe's dead. He dies in 1593, right? Um, it is noted in the Henslow Diary in 1592, so we can date it at least that early. So some version of the play exists if the A or B text isn't exactly what they are. If A or B texts get worked over by other hands, which there's argument about which ones may or may not be worked over. Some people think B text is actually more original, even though it's the later printed one, and they think A text may have um, some working overhand. But then other people say, no, B text totally has Samuel Raleigh and William Byrd working it over. That's the reworked over one. The A text is actually maybe a little closer. People have to end up positing this stuff, one, because the two text differences, also because, like you were sort of bringing up with the Marlowe disintegration, this play doesn't exactly always linguistically or stylistically or thematically line up with other Marlowe plays. And there are obvious points within the play where it seems like we go from maybe a more heightened tone and delivery of poetry to these really crass, crude, low comedy clown scenes. And so to give a thematic reception of this play, I think a lot of people look at this as a Christian cautionary tale of what happens when somebody goes too far away from God, in one sense, or it's a humanist cautionary tale about, like, don't try and, almost a Greek tragedy thing. Don't try and overreach. Um, don't try and bite off more than you can chew, sort of thing. Um, uh, I've always been super dissatisfied with those readings. Obviously, Brady, you are too. Um, and to be fair, there are definitely aspects of that, and I think at some point, um, maybe that is something of the exoteric reading, right? Like maybe that is supposed to be the exoteric reading. But the inherent conflict there is that Christopher Marlowe is supposed to be a known atheist. He is a famous atheist. He's one of the first famous atheists. When people talk about him after he dies, and even when he's still alive, they talked about him as an atheist. In fact, him being an atheist may have gotten fellow playwright Thomas Kyd, who wrote the Spanish tragedy, one of the great playwrights before Shakespeare. He died because he got tortured in a jail cell for months, and he got tortured in a jail cell because well, there were atheist papers in his lodgings, which he didn't want to rat out his roommate. He didn't want to be like, oh, those aren't mine, those are my roommate's Marlowe. Snitches get stitches, right? um but while Kyd was getting tortured, guess what happened to Christopher Marlowe?
Getting stabbed in a bar, right? Oh, yeah.
He didn't get shot, but yeah, yeah. I think he gets stabbed in the temple.
Oh, geez.
Um, um, and there's a coroner's report. You can question the validity of the coroner's report, and he did work for the Secret Service, so there's possibilities surrounding his death, sure. But okay, this maybe isn't Marlowe's most famous play during the day. Maybe Tamburlaine is, but this is arguably his second most famous. And once we get into the Shakespeare era of the '90s, it's probably more famous and more well liked because Tamburlaine's old by then. Um, it seems to have just kind of showed straight through the '90s, so it spoke to its audience. That's for darn certain. I think going on your comment about how people kind of sleep on this play is that it's this weird thing where people overhype while underrating the play. It's a lot of people
Yeah.
kind of armchair like, oh yeah, Dr. Faustus, that's one of the greats because they've heard the Goethe title. They maybe know Marlowe's, the second Shakespeare or something, and so it's like, oh, I know that's Marlowe. Yes, that's one of the good ones, and maybe they have read it and they like see some philosophical insight in it, and they're like, yeah, this is smart. But at the same time, like I think few people like that actually end up loving the play because dramaturgically, there's not a ton of action happening. It's got kind of a small set of characters. We're pretty much just with Faustus and Mephistopheles the whole time. It's almost a two-man show. It's small, and it is somewhat moralizing. It is somewhat pedantic at times. Like, you got to know a little bit of classics for some of these lines to land. In a way that you don't always with Shakespeare. Um, and that, yeah, like, I don't know, compared to Jew of Malta, like the plot, right? Like Jew of Malta, like you're moving, you're weaving, it's like,
Yeah.
whoa, Tamburlaine, even, like, I know you haven't gotten to Tamburlaine yet, but especially Tamburlaine Part 1 is just this rocket ride to the top through pure might and power. Just like, yeah, I mean, he's not a good dude, but he just that other guy up. Like, oh man, that was cool, and you just do that. Um, this plays something else. This plays something different, and every time it goes to try and get in an earnest direction in a way that Jew of Malta or Tamburlaine or Edward II does, there's something to completely undercut it. And so in that sense, I think it's hard for people to like fully like I just love this play for it being a play. And I think it ends up being more of a philosophical text.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's wrong. In fact, I think people maybe should embrace that a little more, Read it the same way you read like Zarathustra, or read it the
Yes.
same way you read The Stranger by Camus or something, right? Like this is a philosophical novel, or play rather. Um, but yeah, where do you want to go from here?
Yeah, I think that was a perfect tee up for this sort of conversation. Yeah, thanks for getting us up to speed for that, because just you kind of laid it out there like, oh yeah, Marlowe and his roommate, they caught a bunch of atheist papers in the room. It's like, what does this look like exactly? Like, I hate God, or I don't think God's even there. Like what does that mean? Like you find some atheist papers, like
Yeah, is
intelligence
it like
papers, like he caught
the
God with his pants
manuscript?
down.
Yeah, is it like the manuscript to the genealogy of morals or something? Like,
Yeah. um,
what
and that yeah,
but
but
yeah, like,
that they use the,
uh,
the atheist, but also making this supposed moralizing tale, like that doesn't make any sense, like, and even if you kind of be like, okay, maybe it's a humanist thing, it's still kind of like strange to, I feel like you kind of got to wrestle it into that position, a little bit.
okay, yeah, yeah.
And so,
Which, yeah,
oh, go ahead,
go
go
on. So I maybe that word wrestles a good segue. Because at some point, I think this play just defied a lot of readings for hundreds of years, because we didn't have the postmodern paradigm yet. That in some way, I know that Goethe is supposed to completely build on, and yeah, Goethe's play is much longer, fuller. The characters are more realized. Like there is more in Goethe. I'm not going to sit here and say Goethe's not a good writer. Like I don't want that to go in that direction, but I am going to be sort of constantly trying to say, yeah, Goethe's great, but Marlowe's doing something that you're not realizing. And so just keep that in mind. Um, because like, okay, at some point, I we can take like just name a philosopher, and we can almost use uh, Dr. Faustus as like a Rosetta Stone into someone's philosophy. Like it is like almost a sacred text in how much you can place philosophical ideas and systems onto it and make a reading of it. And so like um, I've been listening to a ton of philosophy podcasts, been reading a bunch of my philosophy books that have been rotting on my shelf since college. And it's like, no, you know what? I need to rekindle this inner seeker in me. I'm something of a materialist. I'm not like a idealist or spiritualist or anything like that. But if you get too hardcore in the materialist stuff, like something does die inside of you, right? I'm going to talk about Nick Land a little bit in this podcast here, so I'll bring him up here. And like Nick Land's somebody that I totally was just like, that guy's just a right wing nutcase. I don't want to listen to anything he has to say because all I knew was, his kind of neo reactionary stuff that's a little more recent. I didn't know about his earlier leftist past. I didn't know about all the CCRU stuff, and so I always kind of was like, nah, no, Nick Land. Nick Land's just some crazy right winger that's co-opting Nietzsche to help big business or something, right? But then as I've been diving into these podcasts and stuff, I actually did a little homework on Nick Land, and I don't agree with almost anything he says, but he's a super, super, super sharp dude. And basically, Nick Land's premise is that he's what's called an accelerationist. He wants change to happen at a faster and faster pace, so as to bring about some sort of capitalist intelligent singularity that can basically overrule us and take us to Ragnarok. But like the man's a Kantian, the man's like how are you a Kantian and that's what you think. But Nick Land's big insight that unlocked this play for me was that Nick Land thinks that the big change between ancient and modern thought can be pinpointed back to the Renaissance. We can say English Renaissance, 1600s. We can say Italian Renaissance, as early as late 1300s. But, continental Europe, in that place, that is where Western mode of thought went from being this vestigial ancient thing into what is a modern thing. And he says that there's a lot of things that you can try and pinpoint that to, but like the easiest, simplest one, or the biggest one, the like he says it's like the one, is the introduction of zero into Western thought. That before Italian Renaissance, you don't have zero. Like you can't write the number zero. The concept of zero doesn't numerically exist. It's irrelevant. It's nothing. Why add it? Why subtract it? It's nothing. But as soon as you get zero, it allows people to do a lot of stuff. The biggest, most obvious one maybe is double bookkeeping. And so all these bankers can start doing all sorts of crazy double bookkeeping and keep up way better with debts and keep up way better with trades and stocks and money exchanges and sales and that's what allows the Italian banking state to become a thing in the Renaissance era. But it's not just that; it's like in Italian and European art, it's the vanishing point. Medieval paintings do not have a vanishing point; they don't have depth perception. Everything is flat. Everything is just it's like paint by numbers. It's as soon as you get a vanishing point where something can recede into nothing, into zero, all of a sudden everything fills out and we can see depth. We can see the whole number line. We can see all sorts of stuff. But that insight, like, just totally unlocked everything for me. Because what is the philosophical word for zero?
Like nothing or
What
Nilo.
what's yeah, what's the belief system that or belief ideology that everybody thinks is the biggest baddest boogeyman? Nihilism, right? And so
I said
zero
Nilo as in like
philosophical,
ex
yeah,
nihilo, right? But yeah,
yeah,
it's like oh
out of
shit, yeah.
nothing, yeah, nihilism, right? And so essentially, Nick Land is saying like nihilism fully entracts itself into Western thought in the Renaissance, and that is the big change. That is when ancient becomes modern. And there's no better example of that than this text. And so this is, this could be called an apology for nihilism in a sense, which I don't want to call it that because I think a lot of people would be super turned off by that because people are scared of nihilism, maybe rightly so. But this book is a discussion, or this play is a discussion about nihilism and how to deal with it and what that entails and coming to terms with it. And um, I don't want to over reduce it, but yeah, let's go ahead and maybe get into it. Did you want to get into where do you want to go from here? Because I feel like we could go several ways.
Don't forget, everyone, go check out my interview that we've done multiple interviews now with John Michael Greer, and now we're actually one Kevin Fryer Bacon, Roger Bacon degree away from Nick Land himself, right? Because John Michael Greer has also done a podcast with Nick Land, so yeah, now you can actually we're at the same level as those guys now. I think we can say
Yeah.
that.
Um,
But just like what you're saying there is that Dr. Faustus is the medieval man in the Renaissance time period, and what's essentially happening is this sort of like coming to grips or the realization that this kind of man in this Christian framework, the medieval framework, is gonna have a hard time, right? Like they either gotta figure it out or this is what's going to happen, essentially. Um,
right. Right.
and so I can talk about my first experience because I only have one experience reading it, but you had read it some years ago, so I was gonna be like, yeah, what was your first initial sort of reading on this play, and then we'll kind of circle back to how we both kind of like were reading it earlier this year, being like, oh my god, like yeah, this is not what they say it is, and this is not what we, because it wasn't exactly what I was expecting. Because you kind of hear Dr. Faustus, and I feel like the Goethe one definitely shadows over the Marlowe one, and just I don't know, just it's kind of more hyped. It's a lot more action, kind of you were saying. It's a lot more filled out, and when you're reading this one, it's not of that nature. It's not as like quote unquote like badass, if I had some other kind of word to use for it, right? It's not in that same sort of vein, but maybe our philosophical reading of it is definitely going to place it in that category. But the actual plot and the actual way it proceeds is not like this. Oh, this, Mephistopheles, like serve me and like we will conquer the world and just like do all this stuff or what. I didn't honestly know what I was getting into for as far as plot wise go.
Right.
But yeah, what was your first take when you read it like years ago for the first time?
Okay. So I had an interesting experience on a first read because it was so hyped up. I was in the middle, like when I started reading that, I was in the middle of a big push to read a bunch of non-Shakespeare plays, a bunch of plays from his top peers, whether during his time, before his time, or after his time. And I was on this big kick of like, man, non-Shakespeare is like really awesome. It is like as good as it is Shakespeare. It's the same people. It's the same person. Like this reads just so similarly to Shakespeare. This stuff should all be up on the same pedestal as Shakespeare. And so like I felt that way about Edward II, which is Marlowe's history play that reads very similar to say Richard II or the Henry VI plays. Felt that way about, like I said, I already mentioned Tamberlane. That's just way too fun. I think The World of Jew Malta. Um, I had read some John Marston, and yeah, John Marston's just the funniest, coolest. He is badass. Like John Marston's badass. Like um, uh, Decker was just hilarious. Ben Jonson was hilarious. So then I got to Faustus, and well, it wasn't quite badass and it was kind of funny something, but it wasn't like that funny. And like everybody had pitched that Faust was this like great text that would blow your mind. And and so like I was reading this text that was supposed to blow my mind, and I just felt so underwhelmed. But then I started to have this crazy, like, scary meta reaction because I realized that's exactly what's happening to Faustus in the play, right? That Faustus is supposed to get this otherworldly kind of power with this help from this demon, Mephistopheles, who's supposed to be like, yeah, his genie in the bottle kind of thing. And all that happens is Faustus keeps realizing, like, how underwhelming this power is, how little this is doing for him. What, like, like, surely something's got to come of it. So he keeps going with it, but like, what? Nothing's happening. And like, at some point, it starts to feel like a con job. Like that knowledge itself is some kind of con that otherworldly power. That just the premise of it is some con to rope you into it. And so I came away with this whole bizarre feeling of like, not only was this about con artistry, but that I had been sort of conned into this. Like it was this initiative con job that now I could be one of the cons too or something. I don't know. Like, and it never sat right with me. Like it sat in, it never sat right. But at the same time, I was like, well, I don't want to read that again. Like that was like, yeah, sure, it was fine to read, but well, what was that? Because I had such this idea that he was going to get these sort of quasi transcendent glimpses, almost, Lovecraftian, oh no, I saw too much kind of thing, and that was going to break him. I totally just thought that's where that was going to go, and it didn't. Except on this reread, it totally does. The chat, but it's not the knowledge, it's the closeness with divinity, which in some cases in this play is likened to a lack of knowledge, like a distinct lack of knowledge, an unknowingness, and that the more Faust gets, the absolute farther away from God he gets, and that at some point that absence of God that was the gnawing giant mawing gulf of Cthulhu Lovecraftian darkness, right? Um, um, but what's fascinating is that like if it is that giant like oh my god darkness, that just giant sublime of it, it's so powerful that it's evil, right? Like it's blinding. If it's like that, then why doesn't Marlowe just hop like a jumping bean right back into God's arms? That's the mystery of the play. And to call it a cautionary tale is to hand wave away that mystery. It's to not answer that mystery and just say, yeah, well, we don't know why, but just don't do it, right? It's not a very good cautionary tale if the why isn't part of it. So, what is it cautioning us not to do? What is it warning us not to do? And like yeah, any sort of Christian cautionary tale structure falls to pieces right there, right? Like where in there was Faustus supposed to disavow knowledge and God's graces? Where in there? Like I genuinely like any Christian that wants to read this, because I'm not a Christian, so a Christian viewpoint might be helpful here. But any Christian that wants to read this text and tell me like yeah, I mean Faustus has a million chances to turn back to God, right? But he doesn't. He doesn't. Um,
Not only does he
and
doesn't,
so
like he can't. It's like it's a
yeah,
to do so. And I don't know if we're jumping the gun on like exactly like the end
that
of the
was
play or
something.
whatever. But it's like yeah, it's like what happens right is that he can't, because to do so is to that striving is his ambition for the knowledge, quote unquote, is like who he is, and you can't like undo yourself in a way, like which
And so leads us to Goethe, right? That leads us right to Goethe. And so this is where I'm gonna say Marlowe here, Goethe here, right? Because so like I don't know, going back to sort of the title and theme of this video, bringing it back to Nietzsche, and thus spake
I did too.
Zarathustra. Um, in earlier in what's it, Daybreak, or is it
I think you said in like gay science. I'm not sure if that comes before
Gay
or after
science?
those
Thank
two.
you, thank you. Yes, it's gay science. It's totally gay science. And so he says it actually earlier in gay science. He fully puts a narrative and some more commentary and explanation in Zarathustra later. But yeah, it's already out there in the gay science, and that's what, like 1868, something like that. Maybe way off of that, but it's pretty early. Um, okay, so I don't know. Recently, the White House put out like this memorandum, like saying that Nietzsche's a big bad boogeyman that's totally ruined our culture with his quote. And not just Nietzsche, a bunch of other philosophers who they kind of lump together as this bizarre ad hoc postmodern coalition, which none of them are in a coalition and none of them really agree with each other whatsoever. Um, they are influenced by each other. But in that, it's complaining about Nietzsche's quote, God is dead, and it's making a much more modern reading on it than what Nietzsche meant. Because at some point, when we hear God is dead, we think that what we're talking about is sort of the death of a modern religious feeling, death of a Christianity, an irreligiousness, an impiety, a secularism. Um, and all of that is kind of bound up in what Nietzsche was kind of getting at. But Nietzsche's point wasn't that it's irreligiosity that's causing God to die. It's that itself is a symptom of something else that already happened. And the thing that already happened was the dawn of rational thought, the dawn of materialism. Um, if you want to be fair, like uh, I don't even fully agree with Nietzsche that it's with the dawn of Descartes and all this stuff. Like you can go back to all the way to Greek authors, right? Like um, you have Democritus versus like Plato, right? With hardcore materialism or hardcore idealism, right? You can go with Plato versus the Sophists about skepticism versus realism. Um, like these stances have been going on in a debate for well over 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years. But God wasn't dead since the Greeks, right? God was very, very alive in whatever metaphorical or literal sense you want to say in Western thought, right? God has dominated Western thought for about 2,000 years here, right? Um, but what is the first chink in the armor? Who takes the first shot? Who's the first one to blow a death wound, right? It's clearly not Nietzsche. Nietzsche is a coroner at this point. Nietzsche is
Yep.
somebody coming across the dead body. Um, so it's not Nietzsche. It's somebody before Nietzsche. Um, well, who is it? We can go back to Goethe, right? Um, Goethe is a huge influence on Nietzsche. But here's the thing: it's like Goethe does everything he can to keep God alive. So at the end of Goethe's Faustus, or Faust, rather than Marlowe's Dr. Faustus, the same thing happens, right? He never gives up his pursuit of knowledge. He never opens up and says, "Hey, I'm gonna quit this. I'm gonna turn back to you, God." No, Goethe's Faust just keeps doing what he wants. But as Brady was saying, Goethe's Faust is so much himself, is so built into his identity that to undo it would be, yeah, like maybe a sin, maybe ungodly if you
Exactly.
want to put it
It's like
in that sense.
because his ambition for knowledge is his only framework for this passion he has is sin, right? Is that yeah? I don't know. I had this whole thing about Foucault I could go into later, but exactly what it is, right? That his own nature is unintelligible to him, that it is only sinful. So he's like, yeah, I want to like become really smart. I want to gather knowledge. I want to strive. I want to have ambition. And he's like, well, the only way I can do that, I guess, is go be sinful, because that's the only category he has to place these values in, right? And so he's like, well, I guess I got to go make deals with the devil, because that's the only this is the only avenue for this outlet. I guess if I'm this way, this is what I have to do, right? Because of my Christian framework, essentially, right? And yeah, leading to this psychosis and his inability at the very end of the play, right? So we'll go through more plot points, but right, the main gist is, yeah, he summons Mephistopheles. I want to get to that in a second too, just the name. And then then he, just like Chance was saying, yeah, he has all this infinite knowledge, and that the knowledge even is kind of lands flat. And Chance and I were talking about this. Chance made the best sort of pun on the word diamon, like D-A-I-mon, right? Because he goes and asks like Mephistopheles all these things about the universe, and Mephistopheles is like, yeah, you got it right. Like, yep. He's like, did the stars work this way, and did they actually do this? And Mephistopheles is like, yep, you figured it out, because just like AI, all AI can do is actually reflect what is already previously known, and that's all it is, right? And so it's almost, it kind of falls flat into a degree. We can go into this whole techne thing about what Mephistopheles maybe actually is, just beyond just this knowledge presenter in a sense, right? But yeah, I think there's some other avenues as the plot point goes on. But then, yeah, but even there's a point in the play where Faustus summons him, right? And even the first thing he asks, so he kind of summons him, and then Mephistopheles is like, yeah, let me go check with the big D, the big devil, and we'll make sure we got this contract gum. So he comes back like the next scene, and he's like, all right, you're gonna do this like infernal contract thing. And even Faustus is like, oh, like, when my blood bleeds, I don't bleed very well, and he's like, oh, I got you, like, we'll do it with fire, right? And so they sign the contract. Boom, Faustus has sold his soul, like, officially. He hasn't even just summoned a demon. He's like sold his soul, right? I'm officially gonna partake in this, right? And the very first thing that Faustus asks to Mephistopheles is like, so like, what's hell like? Like, if I'm gonna be obviously doomed there, like, what's it like, he's like, oh yeah, it's pretty bad, like, or whatever. And even before I even get to that scene, something else that someone in our book hub had mentioned too, so maybe this was just like, maybe I already had like, oh, I'm gonna just try to prove this person wrong, but someone was like, oh, there's no internalization in Faustus, right? There's no inner like psyche going on. And so I was just like, well, let's see if that's right or wrong. And nope, I think that's totally wrong the whole time. Faustus is constantly asking himself questions, constantly dealing with his own anxiety about the deals he's making and like the things that he's progressing. And it's literally even embodied with the Kronk from Emperor's New Groove. He's literally got the bad angel, the good angel doing the exact same thing. They literally are just good angel, bad angel. And that is just the psyche wrestling, as I said earlier, with the sort of ramifications of like, okay, I'm pursuing this stuff, but this is sinful, and it's just digging himself further into this sort of psyche hole rather. And yeah, it's just gonna eventually pull him apart by the end of the play, where he's just like led off stage by the devils, because his contract becomes essentially up at the end of the play, and he's just like pacing back and forth, waiting for midnight, and like 11:30, I've got 30 minutes left, and like, oh no, 25 minutes left, and like, oh no, I'll call it to God. Oh, Lucifer, and like he literally can't do it, like he feel like he probably has already sold himself, he's already transgressed, right? And that kind of goes back to my Foucault sort of thing, this panopticon, right? God is the ever-present surveillance that is watching everything at all times. Like he knows like the inner hearts of hearts, right? And so this anxiety of like knowing that someone is watching you constantly and feeling like you can't even be who yourself, or even if you're forced to kind of be your authentic self, and you're condemned either way just because of this nature that they've sort of put this position in, right? And so that's what we're kind of saying, like he is the medieval man, he's a Renaissance man in the medieval time. Maybe I flipped it over the wrong purpose. Yeah, he is a Renaissance man still in this medieval time, right?
Yeah. And so that's a good way to put it. Let me pull it off the shelf. I got it.
And yeah, so there's plenty of internalization about having this anxiety, and even the second time when he calls Mephistopheles, he's like, oh, Mephistopheles, come. Why isn't he here? Like, oh, blah blah. And he kind of has a couple of lines, and Mephistopheles, like, are you here yet? And then he finally, and Mephistopheles just doesn't appear until he like actually says the Latin stuff. So you already see this anxiety at the very beginning of the play, where he's trying to call him, and he's like not answering him. He's like, "What's going on? Like, what is this?" And he's already like kind of tripping out about that. There's already like some second guessing or just this apprehension, this sort of this guilt that's going to be sort of ever present in him, right?
Right. And so I want to bring up old Pico della Mirandola in either this text or his other text. But Pico is a 1400s philosopher. He's part of that Medici crew. He's part of like the big Hermetic Platonic resurgence of thought and philosophy and literature in Italy and elsewhere. But he's part of the humanist movement, and that's got a wide umbrella, but he's like specifically one of the founders and like big guys to push the humanist movement in its first start. Him and Ficino, and Pico himself, like in honestly any of these humanists, any of these hermetic bent humanists, they're the models for Faustus himself. Um, they're the ones that, and I know Faustus is in a more medieval setting, so we should maybe think someone like Roger Bacon or something like that. But yeah, Roger Bacon kind of prefigures these humanists, I think, in a way, and these alchemists and Kabbalists, but especially this humanist bent, because the philosophy around the humanist bent is that we're perfectly in the middle of the chain of being, right? And that us being perfectly in this middle chain of being kind of means we're central to this chain of being. And so we have kind of perfect vantage this way, that way, any which way, right? We're right in the middle of it. And we're in the middle of it so that we can have the widest range possible. And so we, as humans, if we want, can sink as low as we want to be beasts. We can just live hedonistically by our whims and wills, by our just biological desires, and we can live as beasts. That's a choice that God gives us, right? Um, but the real people that want to ascend to divinity, almost like Buddhists reaching nirvana kind of thing, is to build the intellect. And the more and more intellect you build, the closer and closer you get to what? You get to God. And so Pico della Mirandola was this guy that was kind of trying to overturn a lot of old vestigial scholastic medieval thought that was still prevalent in Italy all the way into the 1400s. And he's trying to push them, to think this new humanist Platonic tradition, move away from Aristotle's stodgy ideas, that we do have free will, that our choices matter, and that it's specifically learning and knowledge that will help us get better and better at that. And so, in that sense, it prefigures the whole rationalist movement, right? The whole Enlightenment movement. Yeah, what we do up here is really important, and we got to think with reason. Um, but like so a few notes on Pico. Pico himself is very much like a Faustus figure because he's constantly gaining knowledge, and everybody thinks he's just the smartest guy, but his push for knowledge is what gets him into hot water. He's saying things that a lot of people don't want to hear. Now, Faustus never gets, pitchforked by the public, but Faustus does come to a surmise in this kind of Marlovian overreacher fashion, right? He is trying to get too much knowledge, and that's his downfall. Pico kind of has that life, and to an extent, Ficino, Paracelsus, John Dee. John Dee, I think, is very much in Faustus, but I think Pico may be the most, if any. Which maybe people might disagree, but Pico dies like exactly 100 years before this play debuts. I think. Um, Maybe it's not exactly 100. 1494, maybe. 1493. At any rate, it's about 100 years before this play debuts, so it gives you a little window of time to kind of put in your mental timeline canon. But what I wanted to point out, some of y'all may have noticed this already. Pico said knowledge gets you closer and closer and closer to God, right? Building the intellect gets you closer and closer to God. What happens in Marlowe? The complete opposite, right?
Yep.
Just the complete opposite. And so, like,
If anything, yeah,
Marlowe is
every step
already
of knowledge, yeah, puts him more towards his annihilation.
right. And so Marlowe, in that sense, is maybe an anti-humanist, right? We could define him that way, but that seems a little crazy to fully say Marlowe's an anti-humanist. Like he's part of the Elizabethan playwriting tradition. Like that's a super humanist tradition. I think it's super influenced by humanism. So like what exactly is Marlowe saying? If like I don't think we want to say he's a fully anti-humanist, but he's definitely anti Pico's version of humanism. But going on Pico a little further, Pico goes on this whole digression about magic in here, and he starts listing what are the different kinds of magic, what's the good magics, what's the bad magics, and basically comes to the idea that, and maybe this is where the term theurgy comes from. I'm not sure, but yeah, he says theurgy is good magic, all the rest is bad magic, and the worst kind of magic is what he calls goetic magic. And goetic magic is basically when you summon a demon to do something for you. And so, in that sense, Faustus is exactly doing that. And so, that is how we can undercut saying Marlowe is a total anti-humanist. Well, maybe Marlowe exactly agrees with Pico della Mirandola, right? That it's Faustus's goetic reaching for knowledge that completely undercuts him, right? It's Faustus's using AI basically, like as Brady already said, the
Yeah.
daimon, the summoning of the thing outside of you, the taking your brain and putting it into something else, which is actively what we as a culture are doing. We've become literally a demonic culture, which I'm not a Christian, I'm not satanic panic guy, but yeah, like that is what's happening, right?
Sh-
We're extracting our brain and putting it into something else so that thing can do stuff for us. That's goetic magic, right?
I can't remember if it's
So
him.
anytime you use AI, goetic magic.
I can't remember if it's him or Ficino. Maybe I'm getting him mixed up with Ficino. I swore it was Mirandola though, but I think Mirandola was also the one. Yeah, so I think he came up where he kind of baptized Kabbalah because I think what he did is he found what did he do? He found like Jesus's name like in the Kabbalah or something like that, or kind of found it in the orderings of the letters or whatever. And so he's just like, so therefore, like, yo, we found Jesus's name in Kabbalah. That means Kabbalah is a-okay to use, you know. And so even I've got this is from this is from scene 3 on the screen here from Dr. Faustus Atex anyway. And yeah, it even says here, Faustus, begin thy incantations, and try if devils will obey thy hest, seeing thou hast prayed and sacrificed to them. Within this circle is Jehovah's name, or God's name, right? Forward and backward, and anagrammatized, the abbreviated names of holy saints and figures of every adjunct to the heavens, and characters of signs and erring stars. There's a lot of interesting puns with grammar and casting magic and that sort of thing too. But yeah, I think this is like straight up one of these sort of Mirandola references here.
Right. Good spot, dude. So yeah, what can we say about this? Well, going back to my whole Nietzsche, who killed God? We're Scooby Doo and the Mystery Machine. We're Sherlock Holmes. We're Rust Cole. We're trying to find who killed God, right? Well, it sure as hell wasn't Goethe. Like I said, Goethe's doing everything he can to revive God, or tell everybody that body's not dead. Because Goethe is basically reviving humanism here, right? Goethe saying God allowed. So in Goethe's version, Faust, doesn't ever apologize or turn back or recant his evil deeds and ask for forgiveness. He just plunges right on ahead, and it gets his girlfriend killed, and it's not a good thing. But what does God do? God like totally forgives Faust in Goethe's version. God's like, God damn it, Goethe, or God damn it, Faust, you did it again, you son of a bitch. Like you're just too cool, man.
Yeah.
You were just so you that how can I get mad? How can I get mad? You were you, and I made you you. So why would I get mad?
Exactly.
Um, if everybody would just live like you, then we'd all be, killing our girlfriends, but we'd all be cool with it. Like I don't know. Um, so um, that's not what happens in Marlowe, right? Like y'all ever seen the movie Ghost? With
Patrick
Patrick
Swayze one.
Swayze and Whoopi Goldberg, one of the great actor and actresses of our time, for sure, absolute legend. Not saying ironically, I can love Whoopi Goldberg, man. Jumpin' Jack Flash, anybody? Yeah, Penny Marshall fan too. Not really. Well, yeah, I am a Penny Marshall fan because she got that Shakespeare movie with Danny DeVito, and I've already quoted Danny like twice tonight. So, let's keep it rolling. At any rate, before I started rambling, okay, so Goethe has God redeem Faust. Marlowe doesn't. And if you've seen the movie Ghost, then you've seen where the ghosts come up as shadows and they just kind of tear, the bad guy down into hell. I forget the actor's name. It's like Wally something or something. Wally Resendez or something like that. But he just tears him right down into the cement, and dude's like screaming, goes into the darkness of hell. And yeah, that scene traumatizes children across the world every day. Hopefully parents are showing their kids this. But that's exactly what happens to Faust, pretty much. Like that. Spoiler alert. That's what happens at the end of Marlowe. Um, but like Faustus is the smartest guy in the universe. He's not stupid. He knows what he has to do to avoid that. So why doesn't he? Um, and as Brady said, he can't. And like Goethe agreed, because like if Goethe was actually trying to save God, like I'm saying, then Faust would have just said, "Get, you're right. You win. I'm an idiot. I ask for forgiveness. Do whatever you need to." That would be a real win for God. But as Nietzsche pointed out, Goethe never does that. Goethe just says, you know,
Keep going.
I'm going to do me.
Kind of like Nick Land,
Keep going.
almost like keep
Yeah.
going, full speed ahead. We'll get there. It's all right. Like there's a plan for this.
Right. Right. And so in that sense, I want to maybe pitch that, yeah, like Nick Land and it sounds crazy to some people, but yeah, Nick Land and Goethe, they're modernists. They have a whole overarching scheme. Everything works within that scheme, and because everything works within that scheme, there is some sort of sense of certainty. And because you have some sense of certainty, you do not need to question yourself in the way that Faustus does in Marlowe. You can go like the Goethe Faust and not really question yourself. And like, it's extraordinary to me that Nietzsche loves Goethe so much. Because Nietzsche seems like, if you've ever read Nietzsche, dude's like neurotic about how much he questions things, right? Including himself. Nietzsche has growth and development over his career. He's a dynamic philosopher. Some philosophers don't. They just kind of build and just, make wider and deeper their beliefs. But like, there are some philosophers that have big turns in their thoughts. And there's some people that have whole leaps in thought, like Wittgenstein, like he like 180s. But yeah, Nietzsche 180s on a lot of things, and he changes and he's dynamic. So it's interesting to me that like he loves Goethe's self-certainty. He loves that sense of just like, and so does Evola, right? We brought up Evola in that podcast the other day. Evola, like they fetishize it. They worship this like sense of knowing, this like I'm just doing the right thing. And yeah, Marlowe's Faustus
And more honest, a little
can't.
more, yeah, kind of
Yeah.
actually sees what happens when the rubber meets the road, sort of thing.
And so yeah, that's what Brady and I want to argue, is maybe that postmodernism may not give you this holistic picture. Not to say that this holistic picture does not exist, but that You probably can't get to it like you think you do. Every time you think you're getting to this, oh, that part, that turned in, now it looks like this, or now it looks like it. At some point, our knowledge is so wide expanding, and we want to connect so many things that we're trying to network objects on objects on objects, and it's a hyper object that we're dealing with. And so, like, trying to touch a hyper object straight up, it doesn't happen. It doesn't work. You only see a glimpse. It's only what can be seen in our three-dimensional transcendent reality. Or sorry, our 3D transcendental reality. Not transcendent. Um, and so, like, we can't see things beyond that transcendental wall. There's baseline things that you know we can only exist in space. We can only see things through light. Um, there's clearly stuff outside of that, and we can't totally sense it. So we have to go to science and go to other things, go to philosophy to try and get at the heart of our reality, right? Um, but you're never going to fully get a holistic picture. You can build up kind of minor pictures that work in the pluralistic sense, lumped on top of each other. Um, but it, at no point should you be so certain that you're doing the right thing. Um, but also, you should never ever give up on yourself and kowtow to authority, right? Um, and so, in that sense, Marlowe's the guy that killed God. Um, Descartes, Kant, all of Spinoza, all of them, are given credit for killing God. They're the ones that help build up these rationalist thinking enlightenment sensibilities that sort of displace the need for God. But Marlowe went at him head on and straight up questioned him in front of everybody else. And he did that before any of these people. And sure, there were other people to question God long before Marlowe, but they lost. Like, who won between Plato and Epicurus? Like, or the Stoics and Epicurus, or Christianity and Epicurus? Epicurus loses every time.
Yep.
um, to the point where his name is a bad word now, right? Um, Same with the Sophists, right? The Sophists are the original postmodernists. I'm so tired of hearing people talk about postmodernism's this big bad boogeyman. Let's go read Gorgias, or Georgius, or Georgius, or Gorgias, however you want to pronounce it. Go read him. He says nothing exists. Okay, and even if something exists, there's no way that you can ever tell it's there. Okay, and even if you could tell it was there, there's no way for you to communicate that to anybody else. And even if you could communicate that to anybody else or vice versa, there's no goddamn flipping way that you're ever going to fully understand what it is they're trying to say. And he said that before Plato was around. He's same time as Socrates, 450 BC, 2,500 years old. So no, postmodernism's not a new thing.
Yep.
It's just come back.
Yep. It's just the
It's
thing
just
that's
come
always
back.
pushing up against the main orthodox narrative, or it's just always the secular version narrative, or pushback against some sort of claimed overarching narrative.
Right, right. And it's come back because God is dead. Or God is dead because it's come back. And like, if we want to sort of answer which of those questions is more correct, yeah, we go to Marlowe, Dr. Faustus. Which do you think it is?
I've also got on the screen real quick just to show what Chance was saying earlier about John Dee and Mirandola. This is actually earlier in the play where he's like, I have more to say about this in a second, but yeah, what doctrine call you this? Que sera, sera. What will be, shall be. Although it's weird that this version online, it has a question mark right here. What will be, shall be. My text, the one, my physical one, my mermaid edition, it has an exclamation mark. What will be, shall be. It's more enunciative or something, Divinity adieu. These metaphysics of magicians and necromantic books are heavenly. Lines, circles, scenes, letters, and characters. Ah, these are those that Faustus most desires. Yeah, just kind of showing you that stuff about, summoning goetic magic, and it does kind of get into that Sabati Zevi stuff, maybe a little bit about, and there's some, the Yazidi tribe, I think they're still around today. It's like this idea of like Satan or Lucifer is the first angel that would be allowed back in, so kind of like getting close to him. Most sinners, we might know, ironically, are the ones that also end up sort of like sometimes also flocking to God in some sense, right? There ain't no Christian like someone who's also like been in jail or something along those lines too, or been in prison. So
Yep.
maybe something along those
Yep.
lines always kind of does that. Maybe people, maybe it's that endontromomia enandromia. I'm totally butchering it, but the Jungian term of like, what your psyche swings to one extreme, and then it literally, almost like in a thermodynamic sense, needs to sort of like oscillate and sort of like, swing back the other way, just because of like how heat transfer works. There has to be some sort of like, it wants to sort of like try to equilibrize, but sometimes when you swing so far over, it's gonna swing all the way back the other way. So yeah, just kind of showing that more here. We had a great question in the comments, because I think this is actually on point too. I didn't get to it right away, but the Marcy Volta says, do you consider Marlowe's Faust a parody of Calvinism? And I think, let me go right here to the intro, and I want to bring up Hamlet here too, because it's important to Hamlet too. So this is the chorus of this, right? And here we're gonna get some supposed references to Marlowe's other plays, right? We're gonna get, where did Mars did meet the warlike Carthagins, right? I think is that Tamerlane it's talking about. I think that's what it's.
No, that'd be Dido.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, right, Dido of Carthage. And so you're kind of getting, not marching in the fields of Thrasymene, where Mars did meet the warlike Carthagins, nor sporting in the dalliance of love in courts of kings where state is overturned, nor in the pomp of proud audacious deeds intends our muse to vaunt her heavenly verse. Only this, gentles, we must now perform the form of Faustus' fortunes, good or bad. Now to patient judgments we appeal, and speak for Faustus in his infancy. Now is he born of parents base of stock, in Germany within a town called Rhodes. At riper years to Wittenberg he went, whereas his kinsmen chiefly brought him up. But anyway, that point where it's Wittenberg is where he went, Faustus goes to study, but that's famously where also a lot of the Calvinist universities, I believe, are actually, right? And that's where Hamlet is returning from in the beginning of this play, right? And that's, where some people will point out, that's sort of the Protestant sort of like, rumblings maybe against the Catholic stuff, or even, I have other thoughts about that too. But I think to not bring up Calvin maybe in this sense is very important too, because it straight up, not just because I think the actual Faust legend actually has to do with Wittenberg, but there's something going on with Wittenberg in some sense, right? There's something in the water there, kind of bringing up some of these conversations,
And
right?
so, no, that's an excellent question, because I think the question of parody in this play, and maybe some others in this era, like people ask about Titus and stuff, but like the question of parody here generally, whether about Calvinism or anything else, I think it's constantly brought up because of the juxtaposition of tones, right? That we get this super heady stuff, we get this super heavy stuff, and then we get this silly stuff. And so, like, usually when you have that there is some sort of sense or form of parody. My own position on a lot of the texts from this era is that I personally just think a lot of these plays are more collaboratively written than Orthodox scholarship has fully realized. Like, they're in real time now coming more and more to terms, and they're disintegrating more and more authors and putting forward more and more collaborations. But like, I don't think that they've fully gotten to the point where like they think it's more of a norm than not. And I think they do need to get there. And once they do get there, the way we read plays will necessarily change. We'll start to look for difference. We'll start to look for gaps. And I know some people like, oh, that sounds terrible. But I think that would be terrible if we're trying to do that with something that is actually solo authored. You'd be finding seams that aren't there. But I think recognizing themes that are there that we've been glossing over is important. And like some of these themes may be thematic, and those could be religious, could be political. And so, like, me and Brady have talked about it with Macbeth, that it seems like there's two different characterizations of the witches. That the witches are, at the beginning of the play, they're characterized as actual divine Norn-like creatures, right? But throughout the play, there's stuff to completely undercut that they're just hag ladies, that they're silly. At some point, it may just be that they're crazy old ladies and not even, you know, ostensibly witches at all. Um, you have the same sort of thing happening with Henry VI Part 1 with Joan of Arc, which we were reading in our book club this past week. And that's something that I was harping on hard, maybe a little too hard, but it seems to me at the start of that play, Joan of Arc is completely divine, does actually commune with God, is like some patron saint of Mother Mary, is actually able to beat Talbot in a sword fight. But as the play goes on, she turns into almost a Machiavellian, like, lady behind the curtains, just puppeteering people. And not at all clear if she's divinely touched, and maybe actually in league with the other divine, the bad boys, the demons, the satanic. And so in this Dr. Faustus version, whether it's suggesting that maybe someone like Nash is co-writing with Marlowe in the original script, or that it's someone like Rowley or Byrd working it over, it's possible that they have different thematic viewpoints, and that some of those clown scenes could be by the non-Marlowe hands. Marlowe's not famous for clown hands, clown scenes, clown hands. And so, as such, like, it's possible that whoever is writing those scenes are just not quite on the same thematic page as Marlowe, and that sort of antagonism or dissonance gives us this sort of sensibility or intentionality about it being a parody or satire or something of that sort. That said, that long digression said, I do think that there is commentary on Calvinism here, and I do think that it is somewhat undercutting Calvinism. But at the same time, like, a Calvinist framework actually totally makes sense of Faustus's, like, inability to go for redemption, right? That, like, at some point,
Or
like,
his
he's, dude, I'm
rationale to
not
even begin doing it, like, oh, okay, I'll do all this amazing stuff, I'll cure cancer, or I'll, fortify the city, I'll do all this amazing stuff, and it's like almost the gambit of the Nick Land gambit, like, all right, I'll dip a little bit into the evil stuff because I'm trying to, eventually do the good stuff, and hopefully that'll just outweigh the scales, maybe.
right, and like, uh, it seems to me that, like, bringing Nick Land back into it, that there is something sort of hyperstitional happening here. That Faustus is sort of really in belief that he is this smart, that he is this knowledgeable, and not just him, like everybody else around him, like, sort of mimetically reiterates it for him and reifies it for him. And oh wow, Faustus, you're the smartest guy ever. And I forget the guys' names that come into the room and talk with him, but yeah, that they're all blowing smoke up his butt, right? And at some point, that hyperstition, that oh man, I really am learning this much. That maybe gets to his head a little bit, I think. And at some point, this is a John Michael Greer thing. Um, Hyperstition becomes hypostition, right? And so the stuff that was supposed to push him up forward, he's overinflated that, and it's all coming off pathetic and underwhelming and disappointing and disillusioning. And yeah, because of that, like, um, he is left where he's at, disappointed, but, like, never once does he go back and question, you know, his endpoint, right? Like, at no point is he actually able to believe that he can get out of this. And so at some point, he is trapped in his own head. Like you said, this is psychosis, neurosis. This is somebody who is projecting for the future in a hypostitional way where he's undercutting. Oh, I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. Right. But like, what's fascinating is like where does that shift happen? Because at the start of the play, it's I can do anything. Right. I can do anything. And at some point, he gets to a point where he says, I can't do anything. And so, what is it that makes that happen? I don't know. My own personal reading is it's the moment he engages in goetic magic, right? It's the moment that he lets the daimon be him more than him,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, because yeah, that's a kind of a pivotal scene too, where it's even after the contract thing and after he's asking all that. It's a little later on, exactly what you're talking about, where yeah, he has to embrace. I don't know if it's hyperstitional sin, but it's definitely the meme of sin anyway, right? It's almost like the joke at the point where it's kind of like funny. Just to go back to this Calvin thing real quick before I go to that part is that that what will be shall be, right? That is the sort of Calvinist thing. Like it's all predetermined, right? That there isn't, whatever's happening up ahead is already happening in a sense. Like you're just on the way there. So yeah, maybe have a little fun on the way, or yeah, try to go for the strive for the power or something. And just to kind of, since you brought up Macbeth,
Right.
and I've got videos and someone's commentary on the word weird. I just feel like this is a total inversion of what the word weird actually is, right? Because the word weird, wyrd, is meaning fate and things that were going to happen, things that are sort of fated, but it's got to do with the past. It's almost like instead of what will be shall be, it's almost like what has been will be, right? It's a sort of like you have to look back to eventually look forward, where this one is like kind of like Calvinistic sense, like, oh, only look forward, right? It's all predestined in a sense, right? It's only providence, it's only providere, forward looking, or something like that. Now
Right.
with the scene that you were talking,
But
go ahead and go. I'm sorry.
my bad. I feel like I dodged Marcy's question. Because at some point, like, I feel like this could go either way. This could be Marlowe completely, or Marlowe's co-writers completely championing Calvinism to some extent, right? Like that Marlowe or that Faustus is completely within a Calvinistic framework, and yeah, like Calvinism doesn't redeem him or save him, but it is like a descriptive portrayal of a Calvinistic worldview. But to that end, if it's just a descriptive portrayal, that descriptive portrayal could be seen as parodic or parodic, um, because at some point, yeah, like it doesn't end up well for him. The joke's on Faustus. So like, um, yeah, in that sense, if you want to, you can read this as a Calvinist comedy. Like I don't think I'm against that. Um, but yeah, I think Marlowe, like Shakespeare, is maybe just exploring more so than taking a stance, and is almost letting the literature, the story itself, let the stance kind of unfold. But in that unfolding, what has unfolded, um, yeah, I so yeah, go ahead, Brady, take over because I'll come back and maybe ramble on about Heidegger for a second, and then see where we're at after that.
Yeah, because I think it's a great discussion about regardless, even if you don't have an answer right now, the point is that I think there's great tension about wondering what it is, right? Is that that it's got
Right.
so much ambiguity and it's got so much good pivot to kind of be all those things and not at the same time, yeah, fascinating sort of pondering there. And just to kind of show you that, so yeah, after he's already made his deal, there's a super funny one. There's a funny part before, right? Where it is funny where yeah, he asked Mephistopheles to like conjure him like a girlfriend or something, and he's just like, all right, here's what I got for you. And the stage direction says like, enter a devil like dressed as a woman, or something, and he's like, oh my gosh, this is ugly, like, plague upon thee or whatever. And yeah, it's just kind of, and it says like literally like accompanied with fireworks, or something like that, or with fanfare. Yeah, so just bring some obvious devil looking, obviously not beautiful looking thing, but yeah, it's in a dress and lipstick or whatever. I thought that's just like it's
If
just so
if
funny.
anybody's ever seen the musical Cabaret, I don't think they do this in the movie, but in the musical Cabaret, there's a scene where guy's supposed to be dancing with a Jewish girl, but turns out the Jewish girl's in a gorilla costume. Um, and yeah, just definitely get that feel. Um, um, and maybe we can bring up the Helena Troy scene for a second,
Yeah.
because
Let me get to this
um,
part, and then I'll go pull this up because this is
yeah,
just the part where. So yeah, he's already sold his soul, quote unquote, and this is the part where yeah, Lucifer and Beelzebub and Mephistopheles come in, and they show him all the seven deadly sins, and they're like, all right, dude, like you sold your soul, like yeah, you're bot, like now you gotta like all this stuff now, right? Once again, if knowledge and striving and ambition is a sin, then yeah, you're done for it, right? You might as well just embrace everything else at the same time. So yeah, they're like, oh yeah, like what do they say here? They bring up pride um, and wrath and envy and all this other stuff, and they're like, yeah, you like this stuff, you like this gluttony, you like this wrath stuff, and Faustus is like, oh yeah, I just love that stuff. Oh yeah, I just love envy, man. I just love greed. Oh yeah, I just love that stuff. And yeah, it's just I don't know, it's just like this sort of like catch all, for quote unquote sin, and that certain people are the Christian European Renaissance mind frame is gonna have a hard time, and it's gonna slowly just try to detach itself from its sort of moral framework to at least get anything done, right? To maybe quote unquote try to like keep up with all the other powers and all the other civilizations out there, right? Or even just to
I
like
mean,
even to
no,
just
dude,
exist
yeah,
ontologically.
no, you straight up see that with the Catholic Church, right? During the Renaissance period, is that the Catholic Church is more and more trying to be a geopolitical power, and in the sense that they have to more and more deal with kings. Because you go a few hundred years back, the Pope can do whatever he wants until the king can fall in line. Like, see Henry II, right? Henry II and Becket, with the Pope, and Henry II almost gets excommunicated, right? Like, um, and then fast forward to Henry VIII, right? Henry VIII can totally, to the point where yeah, he can just disavow the Catholic Church. But the Catholic Church had the whole Reformation happen because of how sinful it had become, right? And its sinfulness was trying to deal in secular world goings ons, like getting a lot of money and land, right? Because you need that kind of power to be a geopolitical force, but getting that kind of power and money and land, it's not very godly, right? And so that does come to a head, and that causes the Reformation. And so, like in that sense, that is exactly what's happened to Faustus too, right? Like he has had to do what all these Catholic popes and the Catholic pope, that's a redundant thing, but all these Italian um, clergy, all the even the people that are lay leaders like dukes and stuff. They're supposed to be very religious people, and they're just not. They're about as secular as anything's ever been. Um, and once again, that's partly due to the increase in commerce, which comes about with that zero, right? To reduce it back to Nick Land's conversation. Um, so yeah, for sure. I really like that. Really like that. That yeah, Faust is having to engage in sin because that's the only way to get to that next step. Like that's what the world is expected of now. Um, yeah. Sorry. Continue.
All good. I pulled the Helen scene up here. This is gonna be scene 12, is what it said. Or I'm
Yeah.
sorry, this is scene 11 in per my copy anyway. So yeah, first scholar, and so yeah, he's the scene right before is one that I find is really important. I'll go into that after this. So yeah, this is in total contrast to Goethe's Faust, right? So Goethe's Faust, he summons Helen, and then I think he gets to like bone her that night or something like that too. I think they get to have like a night together. But in this one, it's a much more sardonic sort of
Ephemeral.
moral sort of framework here. Yeah. So first scholar, Master Dr. Faustus, since our conference about fair ladies, which was the beautifulest in all the world, we have determined with ourselves that Helen of Greece was the most was the admirablest lady that ever lived. Also think about Christopher Marlowe as a ship that launched a thousand faces too, right? Therefore, Master Doctor, if you will do us so much favor as to let us see the peerless dame of Greece, whom all the world admires for majesty, we should think ourselves much beholding unto you. Faustus, gentlemen, for that I know your friendship is unfeigned, it is not Faustus' custom to deny the just request of those that wish him well. You shall behold the peerless dame of Greece, no otherwise for pomp or majesty than when Sir Paris crossed the seas with her, and brought the spoils to rich Dardania. Be silent then, for danger is in words. I like that one. Music sounds. Mephistopheles brings in Helen. She passeth over the stage. Second scholar. Was this fair Helen that, whose mired worth many grace made Greece with 10 years' war afflict poor Troy? Third scholar. Too simple is my wit to tell her worth, whom all the world admires for majesty. First scholar. Now we have seen the pride of nature's work, we'll take our leaves, and for this blessed sight, happy and blessed be Faustus evermore. Faustus, gentlemen, farewell, the same I wish to you. And then this old man kind of comes in. Oh, gentle Faustus, leave this damned art, this magic that will charm thy soul to hell, and quite bereave thee of salvation. Though thou hast now offended like a man, do not persevere in it like a devil. Yet thou hast an amiable soul, if sin by custom grow not in nature. Then, Faustus, will repentance come too late, then thou art banished from sight of heaven. No mortal can express the pains of hell. It may be, this my exhortation seems harsh and unpleasant, let it not. For, gentle son, I speak it not in wrath or envy of thee, but in tender love and pity of thy future misery, and so have hope that this my kind rebuke checking thy body may amend thy soul. Where art thou, Faustus, wretch? What hast thou done? Hell claims his right, and with a roaring voice says, Faustus, come, thine hour is almost come, and Faustus now will come to do thee right. Mephistopheles gives him a dagger. Oh, stay, good Faustus, stay thy desperate steps. I see an angel hover over thy head, and with a vial full of precious grace offers to pour the same into thy soul, then call for mercy and avoid despair. Faustus, oh friend, I feel thy words to comfort my distressed soul. Leave me a while to ponder my sins. Faustus, I leave thee, but with grief of heart, fearing the enemy of thy hapless soul. So just more of this inner monologue. Yeah, he was like, I'm gonna kill you. And then, almost like a Lady Macbeth, boom, daggers in hand, right? And just a little bit of like, oh, no, don't do it. He's like, okay. I thought there was one other part about it. Oh, yeah.
And then, we get re-into him. Yep.
All right, so let me keep going then. Thou traitor Faustus, I arrest thy soul for disobedience to my sovereign lord. Revolt, or I'll piecemeal tear thy flesh. Faustus, I do repent I ever offended him, sweet Mephistopheles. Entreat thy lord to pardon my unjust presumption, and with my blood again I will confirm the former vow I made to Lucifer. Do it then, Faustus, with unfeigned heart, lest great dangers do attend thy drift. Torment, sweet friend, that base and aged man, that durst dissuade me from thy Lucifer with great torments that our hell affords. His faith is great, I cannot touch his soul, but what I may afflict his body with I will attempt, which is but little worth. One thing, good servant, let me crave of thee, to get the longing of my heart's desire, that I may have unto my paramour that heavenly Helen which I saw of late, whose sweet embraces may extinguish clean those thoughts that do dissuade me from my vow, and keep my oath I made to Lucifer. This, or what else my Faustus shall desire, shall be performed in twinkling of an eye. Re-enter Helen, passing over the stage between two cupids. Faustus, was this the face that launched 1,000 ships and burnt the topless towers of Ilium? Sweet Helen, make me immortal with a kiss, kisses her. Her lips suck forth my soul, see where it flies. Come, Helen, come, give me my soul again, here will I dwell, for heaven is in these lips, and all is dross that is not Helena. I will be Paris, and for love of thee. Instead of Troy shall Wittenberg be sacked, and I will combat with weak Menelaus, and wear thy colors of my plumed crest. Yea, I will wound Achilles in the heel, and then return to Helen for a kiss. Oh, thou art fairer than the evening, ere clad in the beauty of 1,000 stars. Brighter art thou than flaming Jupiter when he moved to hapless Semele. More lovely than the monarch of the sky, and wanton Arethusa's azur'd arms. And none shall be my paramour. Exeunt. So I guess he does get to sleep with her too.
And so,
but it's not it's definitely not like this like romantic thing in the Goethe version where it's like, I feel like he actually gets to like stay and talk with her or something, and they actually get to have conversations, or she's a little more like, he kind of, he gets to like have his like, crazy girlfriend experience, and this is a little like, kind of like, it's a little what is it, like, not ironic per se, but it's a little hollow in his desire being filled.
I mean, absolutely. She only passed it over the stage so that like ephemerality, it's so suggestive that she's just an apparition, right?
Yeah.
This is just an apparition, and the fact that the way that not just him, but the one of the scholars beforehand, and both of them are like, is this the one? Is this the one? And to me, that's like that's a statement of underwhelming.
Yeah,
Like
too
they're
simple is my
underwhelmed by
wit
her.
to tell her praise. Like, oh man, like, I must not be good enough, or I must not be able to, I guess I'm kind of missing something if this is like, I'm not, I don't have the chops to weigh in on this or something,
And so what's happening is the author here, which maybe Marlowe, maybe somebody else. One would hope that it's Marlowe since that's maybe his most famous line, but the author here is engaging in a dia noeta, which is a Greek figurative language device where your statement can be weighted either way. So, like for example, um, if you're trying to hire somebody and you ask somebody, should I hire this guy? And they tell them, you'd be lucky to get him to work for you. It's like, wait, so I'd be lucky if I hired him, right? Or I'd be lucky that once I hired him that I could get him to do any work for me, right? And so I
Yeah.
think that's what's happening here with all these devices is that too simple is my wit to describe her. So like I'm too stupid to expound on her beauty poetically, right?
Yeah.
Or like um I'm I'm like at a loss for words here because this is not what I expected because it's the same guy that was just talking all about how beautiful she was, right?
Yeah, that third
The
scholar does say that.
admirablest lady there is.
The third scholar says,
Um,
no marvel, though the angry Greeks pursued with 10 years' war the rape of such a queen, whose heavenly beauty passeth all
yeah,
compare. No marvel, though. Or no, he's saying, no marvel the angry Greeks pursued. Yeah, because that could be ironic or not.
right. So yeah, a dianoetic in that sense. Um, and so my own personal take is that yes, that this is apparitional, that this isn't something that is substantive. It is a simulacrum, to bring in Baudrillard, right? Um, go back to our postmodernists. This everything that Mephistopheles makes is simulacrum, right? So in that
Or
sense,
it's like him,
going back to the
like a porno. It's like just putting up Pornhub, for everyone, for him to go, walk off stage and do his business to.
right, but it's not just putting up Pornhub; it's an AI porn video,
Yes, yeah,
and Faust is asking himself, is this a real porno or not? Right? Is this the face that launched 1,000 ships? Like, is this for real?
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
is this actually Helen or not? Right? Like getting rid of all the poetry of 1,000 ships and all that. Like he's asking, is this actually Helen of Troy? Right? And not speaking from personal experience, but if you've ever come across an AI porn ad, you're like, that's not real, is it? Or any AI, regardless of pornography, right? Um, uh, your first instinct, if it's good AI, is like, no, no, is that, and that's exactly what Faustus is doing here, right? Faustus is exactly like, you know, saying, is this real? Is this not? Is this real? Is this not? And that's endemic of it not being real, right? It isn't real. It is a simulacrum. Everything Mephistopheles makes is simulacrum. It is AI. is, and so I want to rope this back to Nick Land because Nick Land has this whole big statement that AI is capitalism. Capitalism's AI.
Yes,
That
yes, perfect.
AI works off of basically the networking of data and the condensed, kind of bundles of like tons of information about the way that we work, right? The way that we speak, the way that we put pictures and videos and music together, right? It has to network on all of that to recreate what it's creating, right? And so capitalism does the same thing with markets. Is markets are these networks of information about human behaviors and our economies, our stock trading systems, our banking systems, the way we purchase stuff, our companies, our brands, our culture. It's all based on going to the market and getting your desires. So the market is actually can tell you more about human beings than any other singular format, right? And so AI is working on that same sort of structure. But for me, it's like, well, if AI is capitalism and AI is also Mephistopheles, then what does that mean? Like, and if Mephistopheles all he creates is simulacra, then what does that mean? And so at some point, to me, that means Land's projection of some intelligent singularity that's some idealistic overgeist. Um, that's a simulacrum projected. That is a simulacrum that is absolutely built and projected by capitalism, which at some point capitalism has become a goetic force, a form of goetic magic. Capitalism is now the way for you to say, I want this, let me quickly displace this cheap energy through a cash exchange, a conjuring, and let me get this stuff instantly. I don't actually have to put the normal natural causal forces into effect to bring about this anymore.
Exactly. And
Um,
that goes right into the scene prior to this. So, yeah, that was in scene 12. I'm going to talk about, I have scene 11 pulled up here because that's exactly what Chance is talking about. AI is capitalism, per the Nick Land thing. And this is exactly AI capitalism, globalization capitalism in full effect, right? So the scene right before that happens, right? So yeah, this is him being able to provide DoorDash to some rich people, right? So you get the Duke here. Faustus is hanging out with these, Duke and Duchess, and the Duchess is like, true master doctor, and since I have found you so kind, I will make known to you unto what my heart desires to have. And were it now summer, as it is January, a dead time of winter, I would request no better meat than a dish of ripe grapes. And Faustus is like, I got you. This is but small matter. Mephistopheles, go away. And Mephistopheles comes back with grapes. Here now, taste you these. They should be good, for they come from a far country, I tell you. So that's literally like the globalization, being able to circumvent bioenergetic, local foods, right? That yes, I can just, have a food truck, haul this stuff from wherever that it's, South America, where we're growing all of our food, United Nations sort of style, right? And now we're getting to just, yeah, totally deny nature in a sense, right? That, yeah, we can funnel all of these resources. And yeah, what's Faustus do? Faustus at the beginning of the play, I'm going to cure cancer. I'm going to make everyone fortified. I'm going to put all the poor students in silk. And now all he's doing is giving grapes to rich people. I'm like, yeah, that's all it's really doing. That's what all Mephistopheles really is like, yeah, like you said, it's just artificial intelligence. It's just capitalism, right? It's just, yeah, this pyramid, even depict capital, right?
yeah,
There's a capstone
this
at the
is
top of it.
Jonathan. Yeah, this is Jonathan Swift's critique of enlightenment, right? That like you're not actually making things better. That you're not actually raising up anything like the bottom. It's not holistically making human life better because the just empty one way pursuit of knowledge, which a lot of like Segru and Michael Segru and others will call Jonathan Swift an anti intellectual. And, I'm picking backing off of Essential Salts here because he was talking about this on his podcast, I think from today or yesterday. But in that, he's bringing up Jonathan Swift because Jonathan Swift is this like super reactionary figure to all these like Royal Society, all these people that are like new post-Newtonian philosophers and scientists that are in the Royal Society, the Royal Academy, all that kind of high-minded stuff. These big shot Enlightenment thinkers and scientists and political figures. Swift thinks they're all an absolute joke because they they're thinking like Faustus at the start of the play, right? And so if you read Gulliver's Travels, um, he goes to four places, right? Maybe technically five. But he goes to Lilliput, the little people. He goes to Brobdingnag, the big people. And then at some point he gets to Laputa, right? And Laputa is the floating island in the sky. And Laputa is become this word for a floating island in the sky. Like if you watch Hayao Miyazaki's Castle in the Sky, it's called Laputa, and tons of other people, that's what a Laputa is. It's a thing. It's a floating island. But Laputa means the bitch. Like Laputa literally means the whore, and it's because Swift is saying science is a cheap, dirty whore. Because at some point, what the people on Laputa are trying to do? Like, I don't remember all the experiments. I wish I remembered all the experiments, but the one I really remember is that they're trying to make food out of poop. And like, but it's all these kinds of, and like none of them are working, right? All their little ideas and experiments are these, silly things, and none of them actually work. But at some point, like that's the same thing being said here is that Faustus was supposed to cure cancer, but he's essentially trying to make food out of poop here. Like he's just giving grapes to rich people. Like this isn't actually helping anything. And so I don't think Swift's actually anti-intellectual, but it's for him it's this kind of gigantic jump to say that reason alone can save everything, right? And I think we in 2026 have definitely come far enough to realize there's all sorts of irrationalist stuff about us. Like all of psychology is built on irrationalism. Nietzsche himself is an irrationalist. That we're not completely rational creatures. That we have an irrational side that we have to deal with. And irrational literally means unreasoning. The thing that doesn't reason, the thing outside of our reasoning control, our subconscious, if you like. And that at some point, that's what I don't like about Nick Land. And I think that's what every left-leaning Marxist whatever doesn't like about capitalism is that capitalism doesn't seem to like, be fully rationally controllable. And that, in that sense, trying to accelerate it like Nick Land wants to, it's going to take us to this point like that, right? Like a super hyper version of this, where it's almost completely meaningless, right? Where it's really about simulacra. It's really about cheap, easy stuff. It wasn't about knowledge. Knowledge was just the means to this end. This was the end the whole time.
Yep.
So in that sense, I just think Shakespeare, Nash, Marlowe are much more in the vein of Swift than maybe people will give credit for.
I will, I may push back on maybe, you wouldn't have we're taking the loony take. Shakespeare didn't write The Tempest, because I feel like The Tempest is definitely part of this conversation too. And I've already covered a lot of this too in the Batman is Odin stream as well, because so much of this kind of relates to a lot of this concept that, Christopher Nolan's Batman in particular maybe is like, that he is the Prospero, that he can, he's the Goethean Faust, right? That he can wield all the good stuff and get his girlfriends killed, and yeah, will still come out on top, and he can make those sacrifices for the good of everybody else, and that it can be striven. He can use the godlike powers to what, maintain the status order or maintain some slow encroaching corruption all along. Anyway, yeah, maybe Liam Neeson was right that maybe Ra's al Ghul was right that maybe we did need to burn things down. It's like, yeah, it kind of sucks, but like it's sometimes like a thrash and burn is sort of necessary to that sort of thing, right? Otherwise, you're just going to get a lot of weeds. You're just going to get a lot of invasive species and things that don't need to be there that were actually imported and just hijacking and hitchhiking. There we go, hitchhiking their way to embed themselves, in other places that they're never supposed to really sort of be there in the first place or whatever, And yeah, so I think
at some point, like, yeah, continue. Yeah.
Oh, we'll keep going. That was a wrap up.
I was just gonna say, like, another way to maybe phrase that is that, like, capitalism anesthetizes our cultural immune systems. That at some point Ra's al Ghul is that cultural immune system that's coming and trying to cleanse stuff, wipe out the dead cells, get rid of the parasites, right? And that capitalism is itself not only anesthetizing but also replacing that cultural immune system. And, like, in a sense, Batman is capitalist, right?
Yep. He literally has he's got the big giant tower in the middle of the city, right? He's got buildings with his name on it. Of course, yeah, he doesn't want things to go down because, yeah, then he can't do what he needs to do. But it's like, no, like, you're kind of built on it, right, to some degree. Your capitalism's white blood cells that are that is trying to make sure that it maintains that status quo to some degree, right? But I feel like that's exactly what Prospero is. Right. He's literally doing Prospero in Shakespeare's Tempest is doing goetic magic. He's literally summoned an angel entity, right? Ariel, literally got an angelic name, and it even like is begging him for release. Like, am I done yet? Like, can I be let go? Like, haven't I done enough for you yet? And he's like, no, we got one more thing we got to do, right? But of course, he's much like Batman in The Dark Knight, where he can use the power, but then he can blow it up. He can walk away from it because he's Goethe's Faust, right? He's Batman. He's just so good. He's just so badass, and he's got the moral framework to use the power, to use Excalibur the right way, and he can walk away from it. But like, I don't think Peter Thiel can walk away from it. Like, that's the kind of folk that we're dealing with. Right. He's not Batman, right? He's just like a slimy lizard person. So yeah, because that's all he does. He's using this nature power. He's using this Baconian. Bethlalim, what's the name of the stupid place from his new Atlantis, where they're using all this like high tech stuff to run their societies, and that but that I'm using in this godly way, right? And that I'm able to toe the line the correct way or something along that. And so I just feel like that's exactly our critique of Goethe's Faust, where that's exactly our critique, at least of Prospero, right? Because we've been like, this is a sort of strange play, like not maybe even the same conversation.
And I mean, I'll be honest, like, let's see, there it is. Like, I respect the Tempest for, I don't know if you said it, Brady, but I respect the Tempest, for what it is. Like, there is no Disney movies without the Tempest. Like, that's the first Disney princess movie for sure. And it actually plays out just like a Disney movie. It's not just that it happens to be about princesses like some other medieval lays or ancient texts before it. No, I mean, like, literally it's written like a fucking Disney script. Just it's in Elizabethan English, but otherwise it's a fucking Disney script. And like, so in that sense, it's unbelievably powerful, especially from someone that was a millennial that grew up in the Disney Renaissance, which plays all on Shakespeare and stuff. And so, like, I see the power in what the Tempest can do as a narrative, as a spectacle. But, like, philosophically, that play is absolutely fucked, right? Like, that play is just this imperialist, like, this is one of the few places where it's like, what, Baconians, you might be right about that. Like, I don't like the idea of Bacon as Shakespeare for a number of reasons, but, like, The Tempest is one where it's like, dude, that is like Bacon. Like that's I don't know stylistically, but thematically that's Bacon.
I think
Um,
even
and it
recently, to bring this back to Teal real quick, I think if someone told me the other day that he bought some private island and named it like Prospero's Island or something. So it's totally in line with all this.
yeah, and like maybe real quick instead of shitting on the Tempest, let me just shit on the on Batman by proxy.
Oh my God, this is
Um,
totally yeah. Here, I'll just share the screen real quick, and then yeah, the Batman proxy because yeah, just to show everyone, yeah, Peter Thiel, prominent early backer and investor in Prospera, a controversial semi-autonomous charter city and economic zone located on the Honduran island of Roatan. This is just totally the
oh shit, no way! It's on Roatan?
This is totally the of Bacon's New Atlantis though, because it's like an island, and it's an autonomous island with super high tech
They
people with
speak
their.
English on Roatan
Oh yeah, dude.
because it's right next to Belize.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, I've been to
so,
Roatan once, I think.
um, shout out to Andrew and Kenny and Giselle and some of my other old Honduran students. But yeah, like they literally, the one thing that I learned about Honduras that is like completely stuck with me was them telling me about Roatan. So they're like, "Oh, Colbert, you gotta go to Roatan. The place, it's the place." Um, just because it was a cheap, easy way to tour and get the Caribbean experience and not have to learn Spanish and all sorts of other stuff. But yeah,
Paul Romer, a
um,
Nobel winning economist and World Bank leader, of course, proposed the idea of charter cities as early as 2012, but rejects Prospero as living in the libertarian fantasy that could be free of government. That's not going to turn out well. It's interesting. But yeah, so we're going to talk about
yeah.
the Batman proxy, though.
Well, and it goes into Peter Thiel here, where it's like Batman or Prospero or whoever, they're above the law. They're above whatever social contract. They're above like Prospero and sometimes Batman are literally above natural laws, like of nature. Um, and that's this total what do people call it? Sigma male. You're not an alpha male, you're a sigma male. Which is to say just above everything. And yeah, Peter Thiel's total like sigma male like poster child. Him and his buddy Elon. But yeah, like what bothers me about the Batman story is that the whole issue within Nolan's framework is class warfare, right? And that economic disparity. And, the Dark Knight Rises even literally has the 1%, 99% Wall Street, Occupy Wall Street crap going on in it. Um, okay, if the issue is economic disparity, who's the culprit of that? Oh, it's the mobs and evil wandering invasive villains. Is it? Is it the mob and evil wandering invasive villains? Is that the problem? Or is it the richest guy in the fucking city? Oh, wait, who's the richest? Oh, it's Batman.
And the richest
So
get
he's really the bad guy?
all of his tech stuff is what all the bad guys get their hands on, right? The first movie, Batman Begins, they got to use the Wayne Tech microwave emitter to do their thing. If in the third one, right, they got to like steal into his stuff and take all the tanks and take all the
Yeah,
crap in order to make any of that stuff happen, right? And this maybe in the middle one, I don't know if it's like some money being stolen that kind of gets
yeah.
it to pop off. But yeah, it's like they're having to use Batman's like front facing personas like wealth in order to like make any of the other stuff even happen in the first place.
And at some point, Lucius Fox is Ariel, right? Um, and like I think that that's appropriate that Lucius Fox is Ariel because Ariel's an angel, right? And who plays
Yeah,
Lucius Fox? The
God.
guy that plays God in every movie. Um, and so like at some point, yeah, Morgan Freeman's actually the power base in that. He's the one that can actually wield the techni. But he's not, for whatever reason, socially the power base. Batman's the money that has to feed the techni, and so like Prospero has the same relationship to Ariel. It's less justified than, say, Batman's. Not a good look, but it's not entirely clear what Prospero actually does for Ariel, right? Like, at least Batman gives money to Lucius Fox
All
and
he
a place
does,
to do this.
all Prospero does is condemn another woman, technically, right? He's just like, oh, you were serving that other Sycorax witch that was here before I was here, you know? Like, you were just up to no good, or you're blah, 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 right? So, and yeah, the only other female characters are kind of like dunces. I feel like his daughter is just sort of like a golden retriever. Like, Miranda, is that her name?
Yeah, totally, totally. I like that. Yeah, like maybe somebody should do a stage version with that. That I could be
Just,
into it.
woof! Just all of her lines. It is a brave new world, indeed,
Um,
Miranda.
um, and so yeah, like in that sense, the Tempest. You're absolutely right. The Tempest does totally go against Shakespeare fitting into this Marlovian scheme. But I do feel like Hamlet does fit in with Faustus, right? At least this reading that we're making. Because
Yeah.
okay, I didn't get to talk Heidegger, and we probably got to get going soon because we've been rambling for a few hours and my phone's dying. But before we do, let me say that I think Heidegger is what allows us to actually put Marlowe's text above Goethe's. Um, and so Heidegger is famous for doing his study on being and time, where he phenomenologically looks inside and tries to come up with what is the core ontology of being? What is the essence of being? What does it mean to be in the world? What is being itself in a general abstracted or even platonic sense? Because you can maybe reduce all of philosophy down to this debate between being and becoming. Like being is your isness, but becoming is the what willness or the nowness versus the back thenness. Um, and so Heidegger tries to wrestle with all of this and says that like basically comes up with a bunch of ideas, but one of his ideas is that like we as humans are beings, but we don't fully come to term with us as beings. Like it's very difficult for us to do that, and as such, we're kind of inauthentic beings. That for all our thinking and trying and striving, we're really not much better than plants or animals. And like, and in some sense, maybe plants and animals are a little more authentic because they're at least immediate in their being, whereas we're always at this sort of distant remove. And so, like, what is it that can make us understand authentic being? What is it that can make us fully understand ourselves? Like um, in Goethe's Faust, Goethe Goethe never like is not him or sorry, Goethe's Faust is never not himself. But it's not clear that he has this super internal awareness of his being that rises to some Heideggerian authentic being, right? Like um it's not clear that Goethe's Faust is actually a fully authentic Heideggerian being because at some point Heidegger says the only way to fully fucking come to terms with being is to constantly wrestle with death. And really, it's to be in like the dying moments of death. Because death is the only way to put the full stop on everything. Without death, you don't have a closed picture. You can't look at it. It's just an hyperobject still. It only becomes an object at that moment of death. That's the only way that being becomes actualized. And like he's kind of right. Like how is it being if you're still being? You haven't been. It to be being. You need to kind of put that period on the end. You need to have been. You need that full loop. And I think that's what Marlowe shows us that Goethe doesn't. That is why this play isn't Whoopsie Goldberg's Ghost, right? That's why this isn't just, oh, look at that silly. That's why I can't fully agree to a Calvinist parody. It's not like, oh, look at that silly idiot getting toppled by the demon ghost shadows, just like Whoopi Goldberg. No, Whoopi never died in that movie. But like, no, like at some point, there's something incredibly gut-wrenchingly, heartbreakingly tragic about his ending. About him saying no. About him saying, "I'm not going to do it. I can't. You want me to? I can't." And it reminds me a lot of the main character in The Stranger at the end, right? Where the whole play he's just been wandering about aimlessly, listlessly, just wandering. His mom died. He doesn't seem to care. He gets in a fight on a beach, gets arrested, doesn't seem to care. Somebody dies, doesn't seem to care, doesn't give a shit one way or another, and then is about to get killed and executed for a death sentence for killing this other guy on the beach. And he's been stuck in this prison cell, and a priest comes to him. And the priest is like, "All right, buddy, like, time to get good with God here, buddy. Like, let's do a little, little praying, a little, repentance of our sins, and you should be right as rain." And this guy that's like barely cared or talked throughout this entire play, not reacted to anybody, just goes ballistic. Just goes ballistic on this priest, and is like, "Why the fuck would I care now? Like, why would I go and turn and start asking for something now? Like, it's absurd. It's completely meaningless. You're asking me to do something that is nonsensical. It doesn't compute. It's not that I don't believe it. It's that it's meaningless." And so, like, in that sense, that character too is coming to a full sense of being. He's coming to this Heideggerian sense, and so is Marlowe. So is Marlowe's Faustus. He's coming to this full sense of being in this denial of God in that moment of death. That denial of God is the it's negative subjectivity cutting the big other away so that only you are left, only the self, true being, authentic being. And I don't see anybody saying that about Marlowe. I see everybody Goethe, 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 oh Goethe, Goethe's just the Goethe. And like, what even bothers me is Shakespeare, Shakespeare, Shakespeare. And I'm supposed to be the Shakespeare guy. But yeah, you can go look at what Nietzsche says about Shakespeare. You go look at what Goethe says about Shakespeare. I can't seem to find Goethe saying anything about Marlowe, which seems incredible. How the hell did he write Faustus or Faust and then not have anything to say about this guy who, for all intents and purposes, in 1595 or 1596, this guy is as popular as Shakespeare ever was. And so, like, I have to assume that Goethe read Marlowe, right? Like, maybe I don't know, but like, yeah, nobody's talking about it. Nobody's talking about it, and that's crazy to me. This is crazy to me. This is a guidebook in how to navigate the 21st century, and we're not talking about it. And yeah, we got all these people arguing about, oh, postmodernism, it's so scary. And it's like, well, look, dude, like, this guy's already talking about all that crap.
Yeah.
So yeah, who killed God? Marlowe. Who started postmodernism? Marlowe. What are we to do about it? What are we to say about it? Well, maybe just one, read this, A text, B text, whichever one. But yeah, I think it has a lot to say about AI. Framing our idea of technology is something like goetic magic. Because at some point, that is something that Pico says, is that Pico thinks that making like technology is like one of the greatest, most divine things we can do. Like to make machines. It's so intellectual, but like, aren't machines just goetic magic? So like, they're confused. They're a confused people. And I think Marlowe understands that these are confused people, and as such, this neurosis, this psychosis, this this internal questioning. But like at the same time, that internal questioning is what defines him. It's what makes him him. It's what allows Goethe to keep him alive, even if Marlowe can't. You know, um, and yeah, like I don't know, to go back to the Batman thing. As much as Batman throws down the staff like Prospero, he doesn't seem to go away. He keeps coming back looking different, and everybody just seems to keep justifying this Batman like behavior. Doesn't matter if it's Christian Bale or Ben Affleck or whoever. And so, like, no, I don't think Batman will go away. I don't think he does throw down his staff because he knows he can come back with a different face,
And to
right?
take one more shot at Goethe maybe here, because yeah, the oh man, yeah, what a great summary from all that stuff too. Great critique, and because we were talking about this psychosis that's underway, right? You're either some people are either gonna go full evangelical Christian either with their whole behavior and their whole sort of like reductive mode of thinking, or yeah, they'll continue. And all these philosophers we're bringing up Nietzsche, we're bringing up Heidegger, I'm about to bring up Spengler. All of them are like Germans, right? They're all from like the northern tradition, essentially, right? I'm going to bring back Goethe here to even talk about the Greeks, because as much as you love the Greeks, and I'm actually, maybe I'll give, this is actually their point for them, because you're like, yeah, like apparently I think someone had made this critique, and I don't know if it's correct, but I'd heard this some time ago, like, yeah, the Romans and Greeks could have made kind of stuff like this, but they kind of knew that it was kind of like pointless or stupid to kind of like do too much techne, where something maybe about the Northern European has sort of been like enamored by it, and like I think that's just striving. I think that's this ambition thing, right? And here's Goethe, I feel like, trying to, what I've been saying is like baptize this ambition, right? Much like Prospero's been trying to baptize this ambition. Like, oh no, we can strive towards God, right? You want to be ambitious for God, buddy. Like that's how you could do it. And so, like, and, these scenes here, and so I'll relate this real quick to multiple videos I've already done, but Spengler said that the Faustian spirit, right? We've got these terms, Faustian barget, Faustian spirit, right? They have cultural baggage here, and Spengler famously said that the purest expression of the Faustian spirit was the Gothic, right? The sort of ascension toward God with these like looming cathedrals and all this sort of stuff, right? But I've already kind of broken it down that the word Gothic itself is, it's like, where's the word goth come from? It comes from obviously these people that we have described this sort of a cultural aesthetic to, that yeah, they themselves, the 500-600s didn't build that crap, but or at least 300s maybe if I go back far enough, but there's something about those people that the first time the word God itself appears in the Gothic Bible or the Teutonic Bible, and the word Guth is the word for God, is related to the word Goth or Guton, right? Which I just find highly ironic, right? You're telling me the first time the word God ever appears is in the Gothic Bible, written, and like those two words are connected, and I've already shown that the word God or Gut is related to the word Gauter or Got, is one of Odin's frequent names in the Norse literature. Okay, and he's already been sort of ascribed as being like either he subsumed Got, or maybe Got was actually just one of these expressions of this particular entity the whole time. But anyway, I've got Goethe's Faust pulled up here, and at one point where Mephistopheles, and if you actually notice this here, most of the time you see Mephistopheles, it's always the ELES. And I want to get back to our original Faust, our Christopher Marlowe's, because he always does ILIS, right? So you get the proper fill with as in philotes and phil as in Greek love. But anyway, at this one scene, there's a couple different scenes I'm gonna bring up real quick. Mephistopheles here and Faust, they go and meet some witch. And the witch, he like comes down the chimney or something, right? And the witch is like scared as Mephistopheles like comes down the chimney or something. I forget exactly what happens. And yeah, she plunges the ladle into the cauldron, scattering flames towards Faustus. She's trying to throw stuff on Faustus and Mephistopheles. And Mephistopheles is like, "Don't you understand a cockcrow's feather? Have I hidden my face, you old she-goat? Have I to name myself as ever?" He's like, "Do I really have to tell you who I am?" Of course he's, quote unquote Satan. But the witch says, "Oh, sir, forgive me the rude welcome. I don't see one single cloven foot cloven, and your two ravens are where?" And it's obviously, and so in the Christian tradition, the Christianization post the heathen pagan times, they always described Odin as being the devil or being Satan, right? But when she's saying, "Oh, where are your two ravens?" that is clear reference to Wotan, right? It is clear reference to Odin, who is always known to have his two ravens that go out and do the super surveillance, that they can go and gather information from all over the place, right? But it even gets like even further, where later on there's another point where they're doing like this giant battle, and Mephistopheles and Faust are helping this emperor in this giant battle. And Mephistopheles is like, "Yo, look, my two ravens are coming winging. What news might they be bringing?" Right? So these birds are literally doing the Odinic thing of like gathering intelligence and bringing it back in this sense too, right? And once again, we're sort of critiquing Goethe's Faust here, that he wants to baptize the Odinic ambition, because that's what Odin does. He's striving for knowledge all the time. He's striving to like obtain all the knowledge, all the magic, all the crap, because he's eventually trying to circumvent Ragnarok. He's trying to not even for himself. He knows he's gonna die. It's only like he's like trying to figure out, what's that little out that I can actually save everybody else and kind of continue the project, even though he knows he's personally doomed. He's not even trying to save himself. He's actually just like, what's the play to get everybody out of this, essentially, right? Because he will die. Even most of his sons will die, and it's just some of his grandsons are actually gonna, be reborn or kind of avenge him. But the whole point of this thing is that, that they want to take this Odinic, Faustian, Gothic spirit and try to use it in this sense, like, oh, we can use it for enlightenment, or we can use it for this stuff. Where obviously we've been saying, like, Marlowe's like, nah, I think that if we try to use it in this framework and try to keep him like, oh, like your striving is only sinful, but like, oh, and this other part, it's gonna lead to a lot of different problems, right? And that there's actually another very, very interesting line that I saw here too, where this actually has another Hamlet thing maybe. So Faust is talking to a homunculus little dude or whatever, right? And he talks about how he doesn't have as much power in Greece or something like that. And actually in the here Mephistopheles is saying that there's many a Brocken trick I could display, but I find that pagan bolts, and actually the word in German is Heidenreigel, which is like heathen door bolts, right? They've locked the heathen bolts, or they've used the power against him. But I find that pagan bolts have barred the way. The whole Greek race was never that much use. They dazzle with senses' freer play, it's true. They lure the heart of man to happier sins, while ours, one always finds, are gloomy things. And now what? So he's being like, yeah, these Greeks, they don't have the same kind of guilt that these like Northern Europeans do. Like, you can't really guilt them into all this kind of shit. You can't really catch them in all these sort of same like moral quandaries that we can kind of do the Northern Europeans. And so remember, I brought up, why is it Spengler? Why is it Nietzsche? Why is it Spengler that we're talking about here? And I wonder if I have another line here that might relate to this, but it's because like the North, he even it says here, he says you're Northern. He's like, yeah, you're Northern, when he's talking to the homunculus thing, I think, right? Where do we find it? Where he's like, yeah, you're Northern. Is the North is your playground, essentially, right? I have it right here. You're Northern in the. I'm sorry. Northwestward, Satan is your pleasure ground, is what he says to him here. Let me pull up the line real quick, and just kind of saying like, yeah, when you're Satan doesn't have as much power maybe down in the Mediterranean because it's super shiny, it's got a lot of, it's kind of warm there, right? But if you're in the Northern European, it gets cold, the sun disappears and fucking darkness is spread over the land, and then the wild hunt is here, and like if you're not prepared, like winter has come to like consume you. Ragnarok is here once a year basically, right? And so yeah, this whole a lot more stuff is just like on the line. Yeah, here it is. Northwestward, Satan is your pleasure ground, but this time we're southeastward bound. So yeah, when he's like away, also he's also Mephistopheles, or Satan, is also more disoriented when he's in Greece. Yeah, he just doesn't have. He's kind of out of his element maybe when he's not in this Northern European, or when Odin is not even in his like domain essentially, right? But the point is that I feel like all these German philosophers are actually doing a lot more of these wrestling, and they're the ones that are actually putting out more of these seminal philosophical texts, because they're in this ecosystem, they're in this atmosphere that is wrestling with this Christianity, with this sort of heathen pagan mindset this whole time essentially, right? Where maybe the Greeks are like, yeah, we'll go back to this sort of stuff now, and like, wine dark sea, like we're good. We're all these Northern European dudes are just like crashing out essentially, philosophically speaking.
No, for sure. Like, because someone like Nietzsche might argue that pre-Socratics totally fit in with those Northerners, right? But like post-Plato, there's you don't have Aeschylus anymore, right?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
We don't have that darkness at all, and
Yeah.
it's because this modernist, you know, whole picture has been painted to sort of fill in that darkness, give some sense of certainty. Nietzsche's noble lie, um, and it was harder. It's harder for that to win over Northern European sensibilities.
Yeah, and even if it quote unquote won over, converted, right? It's actually still just slowly decaying from the inside out, maybe per a Nietzschean or Marlovian argument of that sort. And
Mm-hmm.
this is also the direction that Hamlet does say that he is insane by. He's like, I am mad by northwest. So I just always like finding anything that has to particularly do with that, especially if Odinic and heathen sort of arguments are sort of lining up in that direction.
Yeah.
But I think that is most of the stuff. I have got some other notes about authorship. I thought because there's some interesting lines throughout the text, but maybe we'll just save a whole authorship stuff for just Dr. Faustus. So I bet we could crack that stuff wide open too. But I think this was a great expose into the hidden philosophy of Dr. Faustus, and yeah, I think that we really brought the heat here. We brought the receipts for what we've sort of found and kind of fully provided a real exegesis for this text and maybe properly given it its due for that like you said, it's a philosophical play. It's like a philosophical play treatise or something like that, right? It's not just
Right.
it's a dramatic thing, and there are funny parts as we did kind of bring up or whatever, but I think that it's definitely gonna fly over your head. We didn't even talk about one of the things I also wanted to bring up too is that there's also a scene where, once again, Faustus fell from himself, and one of the other things he does, he just goes and like pranks the Pope. He like turns invisible, and it's just like, I don't think they quite do this, but they're like pulling down the pants of the Pope, right? They're just doing pranks, and the Pope's like, dudes, like there's like demons around us, like dude, start praying, like start doing your stuff, and of course it's kind of for laughs, so like they're superstitious Pope dudes, but if you think about it, it's like technically that is actually happening. Like there are dudes that are invisible using demonic powers like right behind them, like that is actually happening. So yeah, it could be kind of a little tongue in cheek, but it's also like you got to take your tongue out of your cheek there a little bit as you're kind of reading it, and the some sort of once again Mephistopheles being AI or technocracy or literally technocracy or even technology, and just the idea of surveillance and being invisible, all that sort of stuff too. I think is definitely a part of this whole thing. Yeah, either delivering grapes when they're out of season, or turning invisible to do lame things, to just also ironically also prove the Catholics right, maybe in this scene too.
Yeah. The AI porn videos of Helen of Troy.
Yeah.
Yeah, like uh, it's all there. Um, yeah. Um, okay. Thanks, guys, if you stuck around this entire time. The sound off in the comments. Totally let us know if we're crazy. If you get different takes. If you get other routes you'd like to go with Faustus. Like I said, this thing can touch anything. Me and Brady have a list of thinkers, authors, philosophers that we want to tie to this, and like we probably touched like half that list, maybe. Like I know off the top of my head, we didn't get to talk about Hegel or Cassirer or several others that like it can actually play into how you read this, and this can play into how you read them.
Yep.
And yeah, at some point, like maybe coming back with like a sequel stream going into Goethe's versus Marlowe's and comparing and contrast. Like, yeah, we could do some more close readings of either or both. Yeah, we just talk for days about this, and would like to maybe at some point get an actual edited video about this, as almost documentary video essay style, going over these ideas. And yeah, but that's food for later thought. otherwise, yeah, thanks for sticking around, and hope to get some more streams going. Me and Brady got some other ideas that we'd like to talk about the Shakespeare authorship scene,
Or even
maybe talk about
Marlovian
some other plays.
authorship scene still.
Yeah, which yeah, I got a whole take on that. Like that picture of Marlowe in the thumbnail. Like, fun fact, I'm pretty sure that's Thomas Nash.
Shout out.
I could be totally wrong about it, but yeah, in my own personal headcanon, I think there's good reason to believe that that could just as likely be Thomas Nash as Christopher Marlowe. And I think that there's maybe a good chance that there's a lot of Nash in Marlowe that nobody's fully recognized, though some people have sort of suggested it. But definitely, I think in Faustus, Que Sera Sera could be Nash. That just could be Nash. I don't know about Helena Troy scene, but anything's possible with that guy.
There's some other sexual innuendo scenes that maybe are more Nashian, or at least easily identified as Nashian or whatever. Where there's the other minor characters that we kind of didn't talk about at all. But yeah, we can come back and do another
Exactly.
Dr. Faustus one, because yeah, Marcy, Volta, don't get chance started on it now. But yeah, they were asking about, yeah, I've heard arguments for Shakespeare, disintegration or authorship, but yeah, I haven't not familiar as many with the Marlowe ones. So go prime yourself with the disintegrating Marlowe stream that we did maybe like a year and a half ago or 2 years ago now or something. Go check that out first, and yeah, then I think we'll come back and just look at all the potential authorship stuff, because there's a lot of interesting notes in these copies about, like, oh, this line is also in this Robert Greene thing, and like, oh, this thing is definitely this Elysium line is definitely in a Nash thing that maybe he's talking about too. So that's definitely one thing we could definitely bring back too, is talk about the authorship between that, because once again, if you liked our philosophical reading of this play, does it help us identify an author at all? Does this seem like a play that Bacon would write or not? Does it seem like a play that, Oxford, whatever he would think about any of this stuff, Oxford would write, or any, pick a candidate that you think is, what lines up philosophically with him? What lines up with this particular play as well, and how does that contrast with the Shakespeare ones? Because we already just provided a couple different Shakespeares. They're like, dude, I don't think whoever wrote this is definitely not going to get along with the guy who wrote The Tempest, probably, right? So, do you agree? Do you not agree? Is it all just rich bastards in the end? Maybe so, but I guess we'll find out.
Right on. Excellent summation there, Brady. You can sign us off. Thanks for tuning in, guys.
All right, everyone, go check out all the links down below. Make sure you check out the Substacks. Check by the Patreon if you want to join the book club. Sending anybody and everybody the news that I'm doing some course seminars for the Iliad and other classical texts. And otherwise, read it all for yourself. Nullius in verba, everyone. Have a good one.